Hello and welcome to the Arrays of Living show. I am your host, Jenn Drakes, and I am passionate about life and living it to the fullest. So during the show, I'm going to answer questions. So feel free to respond in the chat or pose your own questions or just comment. I will be checking the chat as it unfolds. So, hopefully people jump on there. So let's dive in. So a couple of housekeeping things, first of all. Across 2021, we have quite an amazing lineup of guests for our In Conversation with shows. And you will see soon why I say this, because February is the month of love. And in honor of Sexual and Reproductive Health Awareness Week, which kicks off today through to Valentine's Day, more love, we are in conversation with Theano Evagelou, who is a certified sex, love, and relationship coach. And she's here to speak with us about the lost art of devotion, a conversation I believe may have us blushing, me included. And she's been warned. Theano's theme word is surrender. She carries the reputation of being a modern day love doctor and is both a government certified authentic Tantra practitioner and a sex, love, and relationship coach who guides busy, purpose-driven leaders, who fits into that bucket? I certainly do, to master their personal lives to the same expert level they've mastered their professional lives. Through her non-conventional consultancy, Theano offers tailored guidance for individuals, and her clients describe her advisory as powerful, provocative, evocative, challenging, and life-changing. Theano, thank you for joining us. What an introduction.
I was going to say, can I get a copy of that? Because that was so good. Thank you so much for such a beautiful welcome.
So, as I said, I have been looking forward to this discussion because we know there's so much brokenness out there related to relationships, related to sexual encounters, and just love. And to bring all three of those together in this discussion, to me, is quite, what should I say, challenging to some extent, but also quite tantalizing. It's a word I would put. And I'm just, yes, exactly. And I'm just so excited for it. So, okay, why this topic? Tell me why you chose to be a sex, love, and relationship coach.
It's interesting. So I've done, I come from a very high conflict divorce where I had no good teachings. And so obviously I got into a lot of dysfunctional relationships myself and did lots of therapies throughout my life. But it wasn't until my divorce 10 years ago where, my ex chose a lifestyle over a marriage. And, I was questioning everything I was as a woman, a wife, a mother, my sexuality. And it really just took me on this journey. And I had this 3-year-old girl at the time watching my every move. And I had to decide, how do I want to show up and pave the way for her in the midst of conflict and chaos? And I was a person who, growing up, who am I as a woman, not connected to body well, not connected to my soul. So it took me on this path, and I was exploring different modalities of just really coming home into my body, learning to have a love affair with myself. And all relationships stem from the relationship you have to yourself.
That is so true. Because one of the things that I've spoken on my podcast and quite frequently in the time that I've been around has been that finding that intimate relationship with yourself. But I think it's important that people understand what an intimate self-relationship really is. And I use that word because it's not typically used with individuals, with yourself. It's typically used seeking intimacy with someone else. But then we question, at least I do, how can you have intimacy with someone else if you don't have it with yourself? So I think some of what you're saying aligns somewhat to that. So maybe you can just expand a little bit more on that whole self piece.
Well, it's really understanding what your true yeses or no is. You know, a lot of the work I do with clients is really getting that mind body consciousness connected. And our body has its own consciousness. It doesn't talk to us in words or whatever. It talks to us through our pains, through our emotions, through the ailments that come over time. So when we actually stop and start to slow down and really connect to our sensory experience, our internal world, we start getting wisdom to our yeses, our nos, what we like, what we don't like. And what that allows us, one, it builds an embodiment. Like there's this grounded force, I'm going to say, that starts to build within you. And then eventually, like your confidence, you know, into the outside world, because you're able to, you know, say what you want, what you don't want, what your desires are.
You know, when you have challenges, and especially divorce is one that so many people can relate to. And it puts us on a path in which you have to decide the individual that you are. And if your divorce becomes contentious, I believe it changes who you are. And before you get into that contentious mode, you need to somehow step back and just say, what are my values? How do I want to handle this? Because yes, kids are watching. And the way you act sets a message for them on how to deal with conflict and how to stand your ground on your values related to certain things. And, you know, as someone that's also has an ex, I fully understand that. So again, maybe some insights there.
Here, there's many things I want to say about. One, you get to decide, you get to choose, who do I want to be on the other side of it? Who do I want to be through it? Okay. And we can all choose victim or, you know, poor me and whatever. And we're all going to go through these like huge ups and down cycles of diverse emotions because we're finding ourselves in the midst of chaos, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, because even my parents, when they went through their divorce, it was very high conflict. It was very publicized. They didn't have the tools. So it was witnessing them go through, you know, either victimization or manipulation or just this tug of war where these children were just pulled into it. And I said, I do not want that for my daughter. So how would I do it differently? And I was like, I have to invest very heavily in myself to make sure I have the support, the tools, the resources to get me through this. And what that helped me do, one, it helped me keep my mental health very well. It helped me keep my emotional. Yes, there were times when you're initially going through it, you're emotionally vomiting. Like anyone that's going to hear you, you're going out. But then it's like, okay, like for me, I had to isolate more because the influences of people's opinions or what I should do, shouldn't do. Like I feel I would have been in a mental institute if I listened to everyone, you know, just the different ways. So I just choose to retract and hire the professionals or the resources that I trusted to hold me, to nurture me through this experience. You know, keep taking care of myself, being able to focus on my daughter, being able to also eventually get to a point where instead of being angry at my ex or having, you know, projected feelings, I was able to have compassion. I was able to come into forgiveness because he's wounded too. And this is how he dealt with his, I'm going to say, traumas or pattern in this way. Doesn't make him right or wrong. He's working within his capacity. I still don't need to make it right for my world or whatever, and I'm able to put boundaries, but I can also accept the two truths simultaneously.
Mm-hmm. And I think the exercise, I think what you did is what I call scoping. We tend to use that more in business than in life, but it is still the same thing. It's scoping what are you willing to do? How far are you willing to go? What conversations are you willing to have? Mm-hmm. And then stepping into that and staying true to whatever those boundaries are you have set for yourself. So it's interesting to see that one of the messages you're sending is just how valuable that exercise is.
Totally. And also like self-care and all of that is hugely important because when things are so volatile about, you know, you don't have a person that's willing to negotiate with you or come to me and you're spinning and you're trying to find like a middle ground. If you're not self-caring, you can get so easily swept up and lost. So it's like, do I have tools, whatever that is? And I have a funny story, actually, I'll share just through this.
By all means.
My divorce took, like, even though it settled in 2 years, the process of legal interludes were 8 years long, right? And I remember when it came to an end and I was going to court and you're like, you know, everyone hates, you know, and you're just trying to finalize things. Everyone hates going to court and it's like dreaded, you're miserable. And I said to myself that morning, I was like, Tia, I'm going to say Tia because that's my nickname that I go by. How do you want to show up in this courtroom? Like, no matter what happens, who do you want to be? So I'm going to put on my sexiest, best lingerie underneath. Okay. Like I had stay-ups, I had like a bustier thing. Like I just felt so super hot. But on top of that, I had my suit. No one knew how, except for me. Okay. So I walk into this courtroom, like I'm feeling like $1,000,000. Like there was nothing my ex could look at me, nothing could say. I just trusted. And it ended up being just this beautiful experience, So it was, I just always was giggling throughout this court because I go, you just see everyone miserable and just doing their thing. And I'm just sitting there like a little queen, just taking it all in, just letting it all happen for me.
And I'm sure it gave you a sense of feeling empowered as well. That is pretty funny. Similar story when I was younger and trying to get into, because I was a tomboy. So then I had to try to get to that feminine side of myself, right? And to do that in my 20s, I actually would wear corsets and the same type of stockings and nobody knew. But it was just a way for me to get in touch with the feminine side of who I was and get comfortable with that. So it's funny that you mentioned that.
I invite all women, whether it's an everyday moment or like even you're at home, we're going through this COVID thing, take a moment and indulge yourself. Like there's been times I've totally dressed up, done a romantic candlelight dinner, danced with myself, and I'm like, I had the most amazing date ever, right? And they're like, with who? And I'm like, myself, right?
Exactly. It's called abandonment. Just sometimes go abandon. Nobody, like, it's all about loving yourself and just being aware of the things that you like. What music would you listen to on a date with yourself? What would you do? And to be able to answer that and be able to not think about it. I'm always amazed. And I don't want this necessarily to be just a female discussion, but at the same time, I'm always amazed when you ask your girlfriends and stuff certain questions and they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And that shows me that they're not self-reflecting. They're just going through the day-to-day routine, but not taking time to really figure out how some of those day-to-day routines might have changed their likes, their dislikes, and the way they would approach things. So this is a very interesting. Now, let me turn it a bit around to talk about the love and sex part of it. So go in now from yourself. So you do start to go through that self-love, that self-awareness, that self-nurturing. And now you want to connect with someone. Mm-hmm. What does that look like for Theano?
Well, first I'll tell you, I want to offer like a really quick tool to the audience because I find it so invaluable, and everyone I share it with, like they find it something so minute, but it really starts tuning them in. And this is for men and women. So I always say, like, have a pleasure scale, right? So from 0 to 10, and just call that in throughout your day. Like I use this in the bedroom, and I offer this to all couples. Like when you're intimate, what are you feeling? Like you're a 4, a 5, a 6, and then the whole thing is, whether you're inside or outside of the bedroom, what can bring it closer to a 10, right? So even I'm sitting here right now and, I was preparing for this interview. What would make me, it feels like a 7. Okay, well, what can I do to bring it closer to my 10? Oh, I got my tea. I picked a different chair. I put on a different top. Whether it's at the office, making dinner, even reading a book or watching TV, having a conversation with somebody, always check in. Where am I on my pleasure scale? So I offer that to any man and woman. It's something that you're just like, oh, okay, I can make this better. It is up to me. Going to how do you extend this self-love to relationship? You start magnetizing a very different frequency when you start elevating your self-care. Right? So the people you attract will be higher quality. The people you interact with, there'll be deeper conversations. So when you translate this, it's always like, okay, that you start organically paying attention to the little details that you do for yourself in the relationship. You don't just let it go on autopilot anymore. You don't just let it go through the motions. It's more about sexual communication or nonviolent communication or, conscious connecting. this is the foreplay that ends up coming into the bedroom, right? Because you're creating a space or inviting like the ability to express wants, desires, needs. I'm going to say intimate conversations that allow you to surrender to each other. I'm a huge romantic, okay? Like you give me any scenario, I'll make it extraordinary. So he tells me a little bit about this and then he's like, oh, yeah, it's my birthday tomorrow, whatever. I said, you know what? Here's something you're going to do on your birthday. So I gave him this little exercise to do with his wife. And then the next morning, I said, there's something else you're going to do. It's your birthday. You're going to buy her flowers. And in that note that you're going to put with those flowers, you're going to thank her for being part of your life for the past 20 years. And then you're going to tell her 3 things you genuinely appreciate about her, whether it's just being the mother of your child, whether it's just letting you, the freedom to build your business and do all these crazy things that you did, whether it's just staying with you and riding the tide, whatever you can find that you can genuinely appreciate, tell her. And then you do the 3 exercises. So 2 days later, he messaged me, thanks for the tip. The flowers were a hit. I was like, oh my God, what happened, right? And he was like, well, I gave her the flowers and she cried. I go, yeah, no shit. Right? Like you touched
I love the reaction. She cried.
Right? Yeah. But I said to him, what happened to you?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I felt my heart crack open. And it makes me emotional. Because I said, that's the magic. And we forget that it's the simple things of intention, devotion.
Yeah.
Like when we remember what we're devoted to and we ignite that, it's like the world, you start seeing it with richer, vibrant, not gray anymore.
And he gave of himself. He
Yes.
gave of himself on a day when most people will want something back.
Yeah.
Right? So that takes you on a whole different stratosphere. That's amazing.
Oh yeah, no, like all my friends, people come like, oh, I've got this going on in my life. What do you suggest? And they'll just say things, and I'll just have these wisdom bombs of like, oh yeah, do this or try. They're just like, oh my God, I'm like having the best night tonight, like. Yeah.
Continuing along the relationship piece, how do you recognize, like, what are some of the triggers that you're going down the wrong path? Like it's time to make a change or time to do some of these things. What do you see as some of the triggers?
Well, I'm going to tie that into the lost art of devotion because we live in a world that keeps us in constant distraction, constantly outside of ourselves. It's like there's higher powers that be that the most that they can keep us disconnected, disassociated, whatever, they're winning the game. And we're money into the escape, disruption or whatever. So the whole thing is when you come back to remember devotion, whatever it is that you're, that you're loyal or, excited about, and you start tuning into that, that's when you start remembering of like, oh, how can I bring this into my life? So with relationships, like I find when they start feeling, a lot of women I find get attached to the task oriented of relationship, like especially when they're high achievers in the world, it becomes very, okay, I've got this, and this. I got to come home, do this for the kids. Oh yeah, I got to have sex with my husband. It becomes a task, and they actually eventually stop. For a lot of people I've interacted with, they almost start desiring it. They find excuses not to have it because it's another thing to do rather than receive or surrender to or joy. And on the other hand, it becomes a very results oriented. Like in their businesses, they're very like the goal, the results. Go. Prior to coming into their intimacy. Or at least recognizing, hey, this is how we function out here. But what are we doing to protect this sacred garden of our relationship to make sure we don't bring it in here or that we hold each other in a different way through it, right? Telltale signs is like when you're starting to not look forward to going home, or you feel yourself arguing a lot, you're projecting, and it's really not about, you'll find things that annoy you and drive you nuts. There's a root underneath even that, right? When you stop honoring or respecting each other and you start, talking or king each other in ways that really don't hold the relationship to, I'm going to say on the pillar that it should be, the distraction, the escapism, when you start noticing, hey, I'm looking out here for satisfaction instead of in here. It's okay to have energy, to be like, to feel that, oh my God, that person's hot. Doesn't mean you need to act on things. Like whether it be for your own vitality, with your own sexuality, with your business, with your health, there's ways to use sexual energy to really live an optimal experience of life, rather than just escape and leak and fall into this autopilot of functioning. Oh, this is just the way it is. Well, we've been together this long. This is just, well, no, it doesn't have to be. Like I know many couples who they're more in love now after 15, 20 years than not, because they understand that the investment in their relationship is what is the life, is the fuel for transformation.
Is a few. Yeah. And how many times do you find that people don't truly understand the intimacy word? Do you find that there's a confusion there at times?
Oh, totally. So I had this one couple I was working with recently, and they were married together probably about 23, 24 years. Mm-hmm. And I was doing this workshop, like this Tantra workshop exclusively for them. And they're like, oh yeah, our relation's really good. We talk, we have sex regularly. I'm like, okay, we're just going to test that a little bit. Right. And I was able to demonstrate to them the difference between affection, mm-hmm. intimacy, and a hand massage exercise, let's say, right? But they were using different language, more eye contact, mm-hmm. Slower pace, real presence. It was beautiful because afterwards, like, oh my God, I had no idea. Like they were fumbling through it and realizing, okay, we do affection really well, but intimacy, there's still room to grow. Right? Because when you're eye gazing for 2 minutes straight, or you're going really slow to really get so present to the experience that you're fully immersed in it, your sensations, your emotions, everything starts to surface, and you're holding each other in that and witnessing and allowing yourself to be seen. And that's very vulnerable for many people, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's beautiful when it happens. And especially if another partner sees you in that way, is accepting of what they see, and you vice versa. Because my experience is too that few people truly understand what that is, or they think they do, and it's not really as deep as it could be.
And it's also like I was doing some research recently with some people and just interviewing them. And it was interesting. There were many people when I said, okay, what does intimacy mean to you? Like, what does it mean to be a first-class lover? Right. And for around the topic of intimacy, they directly associated it to sex.
Yes.
Right.
And we both know that's wrong.
Oh God, yes. Right? Like, so, I would probe it, being like, so do you believe you can be intimate with somebody without sex in the equation? And it was a very confusing concept, but yet it is so available to us.
But the interesting thing as well, Theano, is once you've experienced intimacy in that way with another individual, it is hard to settle for something less.
Oh God, yes. Like it's like going to like junk food processed food, like, gourmet French cuisine, like yes, it completely different flavor.
Exactly. So be warned. Nothing will compare.
Well, it's so interesting because at an innate level, like an inherent level, we all seek connection. We all seek love. Right. And yet there's so much education that can be explored to really create very authentic, genuine connections to establish that. Like we get caught in I'm going to say the quick hits of pleasure, or, oh yeah, this feels good, or I'm going to follow that, or I'm going to do that. And they're intimate moments, but they're not sustained.
Exactly. Yes. Right. They don't have that sustaining piece. And then, of course, things fall apart, and then they wonder, why and all of that. So in terms of formulating relationships, your advice then would be to work on developing some of that intimacy even before you get fully physical, right? Because intimacy can be nurtured, right? Ahead of the full physical is what I'm saying. So if people got better at taking the relationship slowly a little bit and just trying to nurture some of that, they would have, in my mind anyway, better connections, intimate connections, and longer term possibly. Do you agree? Or
oh yeah, no, I think that's one of the benefits of COVID right now. It actually makes slows things down. There's a forced slowdown, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've lost sight of the courting, the play and the teasing of like allowing
the flirtatious piece of
and allowing that deliciousness to be there. Can I be at this level of pleasure and just enjoy and take it in before I go to the next level? You know, so you're really like allowing a build up, a momentum to be experienced rather than just, okay, I want to sleep with this person, or hey, I want to do that, you know.
Now, there were some points you said you definitely wanted to make sure you touched upon. Have you been able to touch upon all those points?
Yeah, like most of them, like the thing, look, you know, intimacy, like what I'd share with people. Like some people say, oh no, like, okay, yes, I have various partners, or I do this, and when we're together, I'm incredible and I'm so present, and I, you know, do this and I do that. And I said, that's great, but how are you at expanding that to prolong the relationship? Or just notice your patterns. That's the piece I want to say. It's like, notice your patterns. Don't judge them. Don't, you know, feel that they have to be one way or another. But the first thing is, when you get to the awareness of noticing how you experience intimacy, like to be like, wow, I notice I feel really vulnerable, or I feel really scared to be seen, or I really shut down when I'm supposed to be opening up, right? It's all beautiful information. Start working with and finding some way or something that works for you to deepen that, or to bring that more into my life at whatever stage, whether you're a teenager, whether you're a woman, a man, or later in life. Intimacy from the bedroom to the boardroom creates rich, nourished, loyal, very powerful relationships that thrive, that help any area of your life thrive.
And I think it also makes you as the individual feel amazing to know that you have strong relationships in your life, right? Whether they are meant to be a romantic relationship or just a relationship, a colleague or anything like that, to be able to influence and foster positive and really enriching relationship. The other person it helps is yourself.
And it just really helps you develop that empathy. Let's say it's a business conflicting situation you're in, and allowing intimacy to be there, like, wow, like I really feel how strong you're reacting to this, or how this is important to you. I don't agree, and here's why, but I can really respect your experience. Even something like that is intimate, because someone feels seen, someone feels acknowledged, someone feels heard, and you're just bringing that to the table can, more often than not, transform the whole dynamic of how something is being experienced.
Oh, fantastic. So before we wrap up, any lasting words or guidance you want? Why don't you also, this is your chance too, to throw out how people reach you, contact you.
God. Wonderful. My Instagram post or my Facebook post at the Theano. They can find me. My website is theano.com. Oh my gosh, this is just, you know, from what I've been through in my journey of my life, and knowing that any conversation can impact or help support someone else enrich or nourish or rebuild their relationship, is truly an honor to hold that space for people. So,
well, thank you, Theano, for joining us. It was a wonderful conversation. I knew it would be. And for our audience, you all know that I am all about the individual and their personal growth and sense of self-worth from both a personal and professional level. So relationships are just those things that we cannot avoid in life. And so we need to try to bring ourselves to be able to foster them to be as enriching and as beneficial to both parties in the relationship as much as we can. And that starts with first growing your own self-worth, your own intimate relationship with yourself, and then extending that beautiful thing outward to others, to touch them and to embrace them within your life. That one life you have to live. So in wrapping up, I am Jenn Drakes. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, depending on your preferred platform, please remember to like the show, subscribe, pass it on and share it, and follow the show, leaving ratings and reviews where possible. The podcast, you can download that. We are on platforms including Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Lipsync, Apple, Google, and more. So mark your calendars for the next session of Arrays of Living. So thank you all for joining. Thank you so much, Theano. And this has been a pleasure.